The title is Making the Case for Space. And really, now we shift away from the introductory session that we started with into more topic-specific webinars. We're going to take case by case each building block, which a country might need to have in mind when they're really thinking, okay, well, how do we take our space activities to the next level? And so today, what we're going to be doing is really looking at those baselines, that kind of baseline information that you need to have as a policymaker or as someone involved in space economy activities in your country to really understand both where you are and then where you want to get to. So it's really building those bottom foundations of both political, public, and financial support for space activities. So that's what we're here to talk about today. And we've got a great range of experts. We're going to be starting with Temedeo from Space in Africa, who is the founder of Space in Africa, and amongst a whole bunch of activities which they're doing in the African context, they publish an annual New Space Africa industry report. Most recently, they looked in depth at 34 space companies across the continent and what they're doing to take their activities to the next level. We're then going to move on to our second speaker, Tina from the US. And Tina is leading a fantastic initiative from the Department of Commerce and on behalf of the US government to do an analysis of exactly where the space economy starts and stops with regards to contributing to the overall US economy. So we're going to be hearing about the work that she's doing from an economic analytical point of view to really try and draw that key boundary around where space economy starts and stops. And then we're going to be hearing from Abbas from Azercosmos in Azerbaijan, from the context of a national space agency that has been active for a number of years. But as we're going to hear, so there's some really exciting things going on in Azerbaijan in space. So we're going to hear more from Abbas about how that's working and how they're getting the general public really on board in taking their space activities further and further over there. So we're going to hear from those three speakers. They'll get around 7 minutes to give some initial remarks, and we'll go one by one. And then after everyone's spoken, we'll open it up to the floor. So before I hand over to our first speaker, Temedeo, I'm just going to do a bit of a summary here of what the questions that we got on registration were, just so the speakers can have them in their minds, and then everyone else can have it in their minds as well with regards to what already has been asked. So lots of remarks about the sustainability of space activities, how to keep that sustainability in there, how to make them move forward over the long term. And I have to apologize, these aren't in any particular order. And then also how to share the activities that space does between companies and academia and other entities that are not necessarily core parts of the space sector. Another one about financial forecasting and data analysis of growth. So once you know where your space sector is, how do you then get to know where it's going in terms of its future contributions to other activities? Lots of questions on downstream applications. And I think this is really a recurring theme that we've seen already. It's kind of analyzing and trying to define where space's contribution is to the other industrial sectors immediately out of the space context. How do we know what you get in terms of your return on investment when you kind of putting funding, putting support, public support, political support in space activities? And then last but not least, it's really that final point which we're hoping to touch from our speakers today, and that's how to generate that public support, that baseline of support that you need at the national level to get the public investment going. Okay, so I'll stop there. As I say, the slides will be uploaded. It's going to be recorded. We're going to have a summary report that'll go out on our website a couple of days after this webinar. So you're going to get all of the information to digest it at your leisure. And so now I'll hand over the microphone to Temedeo from Space in Africa to kick us off with his opening remarks. So Temedeo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Anne. Hi, everyone. Good to connect with you today. Let me share my screen.
think we may have just hit pause there. Temadayo, can you hear us? No, it doesn't seem like it. Okay. Looks like we're having a few technical difficulties over there. So I wonder, maybe we can just skip ahead to our second speaker. Sorry to spring this on you, Tina, but Tina, perhaps are you ready over there to give your remarks, and then we'll jump back to Temadayo when he logs back on. Is that all right?
Hi, Ian. Can you hear me okay? This is Tina.
I can hear you loud and clear. Okay,
great.
Over to you.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Tina Heifel. I'm a research economist with the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, which is part of the U.S. Department of Commerce. I'll be speaking today about new statistics we're developing at BEA, which are specific to the U.S. space economy. Before I go into talking about that project, I'd like to give a little bit of an introduction about BEA. We produce many of the official economic statistics in the United States, most notably gross domestic product, or GDP. We produce a lot of other statistics on trade, employment, compensation, output, and we refer to those as our core accounts or our core statistics. In addition to those core accounts, we also have what are called satellite accounts, and that refers to supplementary statistics. So we have satellite accounts on travel and tourism, on the digital economy, and now we're working on a space economy satellite account. And the idea with these satellite accounts is to drill down on a specific part of the economy that may not be obvious using our traditional way of publishing statistics, which is by industries like manufacturing, retail trade, etc. So if you think about the space economy, there's of course manufacturing of space vehicles, but there's also satellite telecommunications, which is part of the information industry. I want to talk a little bit about the space economy satellite account, and I will share my screen here for just a couple slides. So what I'm showing here is kind of the initial steps that we take when we're thinking about developing a satellite account. So at BEA, we have a list of all of the goods and services that are produced in the United States. It's about 5,000 different categories. And when we're thinking about a satellite account, our first step is to look at that list of goods and services, which are also called commodities, and to decide which of these commodities we think are part of the subject that we're studying. And so for the space economy, what I have here is one example. We have a commodity that's called research and development for aerospace products and manufacturing. So we know that's part of the space economy, but we also know that there's non-space activity that's part of aerospace products manufacturing R&D. So aviation is part of aerospace, and for the space economy satellite account, we want to focus on just the space-related activities. So what we do is we use supplementary data, in this case, information from the National Science Foundation, which is an organization in the United States that has a survey about where they ask businesses and organizations where they spend their R&D money, what types of business activities. So we're able to use this survey to supplement the data that we have in-house to show that about 34% of aerospace R&D is specific to just space. So that's just one example of how we go about coming up with our space-based statistics. Now, the main challenges with satellite accounts is how do we define the subject that we're looking into. So for the space economy satellite account, there are many, a lot of great reports. The OECD has a great report, the Canadian Space Agency, Australian Space Agency, and many international groups have their own definitions of the space economy. And so we've looked to that to come up with, to help guide us to develop these statistics. So we are using the OECD's handbook on measuring the space economy. They've been doing this much longer than we have as a foundation for our statistics. We've also reached out to stakeholders because, you know, there are many different ways to define the space economy, and we want to be sure that these statistics are useful for our data users. So what we've heard is that there's agreement on a lot of things, but on there are certain subjects where there isn't necessarily agreement just yet. And I have a small list here of some of the subjects that we're hearing about from stakeholders. So exploitation of satellite data and imagery has come up quite a bit recently. So I think most people agree that the satellites that are taking photos from space and that are transmitting data to ground stations, that should be part of the economy. But what about you know, the people who use that satellite data and imagery? So precision agriculture is a good example that comes up. Farmers use satellite imagery and other imagery to you know, help grow their crops, and to that extent, some people think that precision agriculture should be part of the space economy. So that's something that we're looking into. And of course, if that is something we want to include, we'd also have to have data to do that. Likewise with television broadcasting, some organizations, I believe the Australian Space Organization isn't including the revenue from satellite TV, whereas a lot of reports that you read now on the space economy do include revenue from satellite TV. Solar energy, construction of manufacturing structures, and educational services such as astronomy classes or you know, teaching physics in college. These are some of the commodities that we're working through and trying to work with stakeholders to decide what should be the scope and size of the space economy when we're thinking about these new sets of statistics. So we do hope to have estimates by the end of this calendar year, so December of 2020, which would give us an estimate of the overall size of the U.S. space economy. And I want to end with a note here, this last slide, which discusses some space policy. So BEA is non-political, and we don't make space policy, but of course we have a lot of colleagues in the U.S. federal government who are very active in U.S. space policy, and so we wanted to you know, put some links on this PowerPoint in case you're interested. These are some recent remarks from folks from other federal agencies, the State Department and Department of Commerce, if you're interested. Also, as part of my PowerPoint that's going to be put up on the UN website, we have an email address if you want to get in touch with me to give us some feedback. We'd be very interested in seeing that. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen here if I can. Okay. Alrighty, back to you, Ian. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Tina. Thanks for that really interesting opening there. I see Temedeo is logged back in. So before we switch to him, just thanks again from my side. It'll be great when we move into the discussion part of today's session to hear a little bit more about how that work's going on the ground. I mean, I note that you've just started, but it would be, I think, really interesting to know a bit more about the timeframes, how long the project and the initiative that you're working on is going to last, and when do you think you'll start seeing some of those results? And again, if there's any kind of anecdotal evidence from what it's like on a day-to-day basis when you're reaching out to industry, when you're reaching out to these stakeholders and trying to engage with them, I think that'd be really interesting to hear more about later on. Okay, so thanks again. So Temedeo, I see you've logged back in, and if you need, we've got your slides, so we can scroll through them on our end as well. So if you don't mind, I'll hand the microphone and the camera back over to you, and we'll try and jump back, because I think everyone's really looking forward to hearing what you've got to say about space in the African context as well. So I'm just going to see if you're there and if you can log in, or if you can take over. There you go. Hey, perfect. Great stuff. Okay. Well, over to you. If you want, we can do the slides on our end. I don't know if that makes it easier for you. Just let us know. We can do that.
Let me try to share it one more time and see if it works. Is it on?
Yeah. Perfect. No. Oh, it was on, but then I think we hit the same thing, because it's definitely frozen on my end. Hey, not a problem. I think we're having a few technical difficulties there. So Abbas, I'm going to call on you, if you don't mind, to give some of the remarks that you prepared from the Azerbaijani perspective. I note that you don't have slides for your remarks, which is great because we can really get into the meat of the subject. So before I pass the mic over to you, I'll try and just to let everyone know, I'll get in touch with Temerayo. We'll get in touch with him offline, and hopefully we can get him back again for one last time. So Abbas, over to you, and then we'll switch back to Temerayo. Thanks. Please, the floor is yours, Abbas. I think you're on mute, but I think we can. Yeah, you might be on mute there.
Okay.
Oh, perfect.
Can everyone hear me now?
Sounds good. Great. Off you go.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Ian, for a kind invitation, and thank you to UNOOSA for organizing such an interesting webinar during these challenging times. It's great to see many friends and colleagues also attending the webinar from the participant list. My name is Abbas Mammadov, and I am advisor to chairman of Azercosmos. And I would like to go into a little chronological order of how the space economy and the space industry was established in Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan is a country of rich space heritage, and today it is establishing itself as an important player in the global space industry. Its space-related activities actually date back to the 1970s, and the parts that were designed and manufactured in Academy of Sciences of Azerbaijan were operating on Salyut 7 and Mir space stations for many years. With the fall of the Soviet Union, the country, Azerbaijan, got its independence and unfortunately lost its space sector up until 2008, when President Ilham Aliyev issued a decree on the creation of the space industry in the country. And in 2010, 2 years after, Azercosmos Open Joint Stock Company was established, founded. Azercosmos is a national satellite operator of the Republic of Azerbaijan, and it provides satellite-delivered telecommunication and Earth observation services to its customers, both in private and in public sectors. The activities of Azercosmos are carried out in 5 main directions, which would be supporting the socio-economic development of the country, which would be supporting the national security, expanding commercial activities, supporting space R&D activities, as well as representing Azerbaijan in international space arena. So today, Azercosmos has 3 satellites in its fleet, Azerspace 1 and Azerspace 2 telecommunication satellites, and also Azersky Spot 7 optical imaging satellite. With that, our satellite fleet provides services to more than 100 private and public entities in all over the world, to be precise, and 1/3 of the world. There are many different aspects that we're dealing with day to day. As I mentioned, that in 2010, Azercosmos was established as an open joint stock company under the Ministry of Communications and High Technologies. However, the evolutionary process took us to the point when in 2017, in October, the president of the country issued a decree making Azercosmos an independent state entity reporting directly to the Cabinet of Ministers, to the government. And also Azercosmos got the functions and mandates of Azerbaijan Space Agency. With that, besides the activities that I mentioned previously, we started holding many different programs, educational programs, socioeconomic programs involving the public, the youth, and all the stakeholders in the country. Together with the Ministry of Education of the country, we annually hold CANSAT Azerbaijan Model Satellite Competition. Moreover, in April of last year, we held a festival for rocket modeling among students, and the festival participants built rocket models that were launched to the height of 350 meters. In 2018, Azercosmos supported active space of European Space Agency and CNES by providing technical experts and coaches, and was on the jury of the hackathon. In October 2019, together with ADA University, Azercosmos held NASA Space Hubs Hackathon in Azerbaijan. Furthermore, Azercosmos conducts the New Space Business Accelerator Program. It is an acceleration program that provides technological and industrial and business mentoring and offers seed funding for early stage space startups. Today, we represent the Republic of Azerbaijan at the UN COPUOS, at the International Telecommunications Satellite Organization, ITSO, the European Telecommunications Satellite Organization, Eutelsat, the International Organization of Space Communications, Intersputnik, the IAF, the International Astronautical Federation, the EMEA Satellite Operators Association, and we're also a member of World Teleport Association. We also take very active part in international initiatives. We joined the Space Climate Observatory SCO initiative in June 2019. Now I would like to focus on what we do for bringing the investments to our country. As you saw, we have a very evolutionary and long way of being what we are today. And in 2018, we decided that we will bid to host the International Astronautical Congress in 2022 in Baku, Azerbaijan. And after hard work with the greatest support of the country's president, the cabinet of ministers, with all the public and private entities and the IAF members, we were granted to host the 73rd IAC in 2022 in Baku. Unfortunately, with the situation COVID-19 pandemic across the globe, it will be postponed for 1 year and will be in 2023. The IAC is a great platform where it brings all the space actors in one event, in one milestone event annually. Last year it was held in Washington, D.C., and there were almost 7,000 participants from across all the sectors. So we will have, by being a host, we will also have the privilege of drafting the global space agenda for that year, for such a grandiose global event. And we will also expose our country to the potential investors. So from starting with one satellite in 2013, today having 3 satellites in a fleet along the way getting the mandate or some mandates of and functions of space agency and representing the country in global arena. Azercosmos now will be the host in 2023 of such a great event. So with that in mind, we're also currently working on our new space strategy. We analyze a lot of reports. We'll look at the downstream and upstream of sectors of what is happening, and we're drafting the space strategy for coming years. With that in mind, with the IAC to be held in Baku, Azerbaijan in almost 3 years, we are considering and we're drafting in our national space strategy different options for tax, customs, and other incentives for potential investors. We are looking for terms and conditions for joint investments, for partnerships, for getting the big players outsourcing some of their work to Baku. And we have a great ambition to become a space and high technologies hub in the region. As you know, Baku, Azerbaijan is located right in the crossroads of east and west and north and south. So we enjoy this geopolitical location of ours. So with that said, I am right on time. I don't want to take more of your time, and I look forward to more discussion during the Q&A session. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much, Abbas, and it's great to have such a comprehensive rundown of all the great things happening over there in Azerbaijan. I think people are going to be particularly interested in. I mean, we could have separate sessions on lots of the different subjects that you touched upon. I mean, especially the tax incentives that you're introducing and trying to encourage public and private partnerships and investment in Baku and Azerbaijan in this area. I mean, knowing exactly how those policies are formed and where they're going would be fantastic to learn more about going forward. I think especially interesting when we switch to the moderation, and I see Temadayo is back on board, so we are going to go to him before we get into the discussion, is knowing how you've maintained that level of interest in Azerbaijan for space affairs and space activities over the years, because that's a long time of a lot of investment from both the political and economical and societal side in encouraging space activities to be maintained. So it would be great to really start unpacking how the public are engaged and how the public support is maintained going forward. Okay, great. Thanks again for your time, Abbas, and looking forward to hearing more from you later. Now we're going to go back to Temadayo from Space in Africa. We've got your slides up and running and ready to go. So I'm going to share my screen, Temadayo, and then I'll hand you the microphone. And then hopefully that'll help with the connection and we can go from there. So if you just give me 2 seconds, I will get the slides up on my side. There you go. And with that, I'm going to turn off my camera and then give you the microphone. And if you just say next slide as you want, then we'll be good to go. So over to you.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, my name is Temadayo. Can you hear me?
Hear you loud and clear. Perfect.
Okay, great. My name is Temadayo from Space in Africa. Our work in Space in Africa majorly focus on analysis on the African space and satellite industry. We started working on this in 2018. And last year, we released the most comprehensive report ever made on the African space and satellite industry, where we profile what has happened in the industry from 1998 to 2019. We also did an industry estimate to see how much revenue the industry is actually generating. And that was how we came by the figure of 7.34 billion US dollar. That was the estimate of how much the industry was generating annually. And based on the data available, we discovered that based on how the industry is growing, it is expected to grow over 40% in the next 5 years. And by 2024, the industry should be generating a bit over 10 billion US dollar annually. Last year, we also released a new space industry report, which profile some new space companies in Africa that are focusing on the upstream segment. Next slide, please. The African space and satellite industry is growing. Currently, about 41 satellites have been launched up to date by 11 countries. 38 of these satellites were launched by 11 countries, while 3 of the satellites were multilateral projects where countries came together to work on this project. And last year alone, 8 satellites were launched by these countries, showing, that was the year that we experienced the highest satellite launch in Africa. Basically, the industry has been growing at a very good rate. In the past 5 years, we've seen more satellites launched than in previous years. And, this is reflecting on how much countries are actually investing in the space program and how many new entrants we're also seeing in the industry. For example, last year, countries like Ethiopia, like Rwanda and Sudan actually launched their first satellite. And since then, we've also seen new countries announce space programs and all of that. Next slide, please. The number of African countries with space program is also increasing. It is expected that by 2024, the number of African countries with satellites in space would rise up to 20 from the current 11 countries that we have. The graph on your left shows the African countries that is expected to have a satellite in space by 2024. And on the right side, you can see the breakdown of the African space industry revenue segment, which shows that the industry is bringing in about $7.37 billion annually. Majority of this money is coming from satellite television services. And then we have the fixed satellite services and mobile satellite services, followed by GNSS services. And then we have remote sensing, Earth observation, and satellite technology and manufacturing. We're seeing a rise in the number of new space companies in Africa, focusing on upstream and downstream. Next slide. Yes, we're seeing a rise in the number of African companies that are focusing on upstream and downstream segments in the industry. The African space program is majorly towards space applications. So these countries are majorly just using satellite services to solve developmental problems in their respective countries. So we don't have like a lot of space exploration programs and all sort of things. So we're seeing a lot of upstream and downstream companies. We have more downstream companies than more upstream. There are currently over 200 downstream companies in Africa using satellite services, like communication services and Earth observation data to solve different developmental problems, focusing on like different industries in Africa. And countries are also doubling down on their investments in space program. The amount of money being invested in national space budgets is increasing every year. And it shows that the African space industry has a very bright future. I'm going to stop here. My time's up.
Hey, thank you very much, Temidayo. That's really interesting overview of all the great stuff that's happening in Africa, and it's fantastic to see so much growth and such a nice summary of a lot of kind of recent events that are taking things to the next level there, and we certainly look forward to hearing more from you going on. So now's the point in the program where we switch to a more interactive footing, and so I'd really like to encourage everybody to use the chat function. Quite a few questions have already been coming in, so thanks a lot for those, and we'll start posing those back to the speakers so we can start really kind of drilling down into the remarks that they've given, the insights that they've already shared, and some of the success stories that they've reminded and demonstrated today. And I suppose just before we get to the questions, I'd just like to remind you that the focus of these webinars in the Space Economy Initiative is very much to exchange ideas and insights on what is working today to build healthy space economies. And so it's really nice that we've got this practical focus that I'm already seeing coming through from the questions. So I'm going to start with a question that we received from the chat, and it's, I think, probably best angled towards Tina, in that it's a question with regards to how certain things are measured from a space point of view, with regards to the input and output analysis as part of the overall national accounting, for when you're quantifying the economic interrelationships between the sectors. And I think this really is the key point. I mean, I'm already thinking back to the first webinar when we had a lot of speakers talking about how they're trying to promote the role of space, not just in a space context, but in the much wider economic context. So Tina, if you don't mind picking up that question to kick us off, please, over to you. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Ian. This is a great question. The question is, the relevance of input-output analysis when quantifying economic relationships, and that's actually how we do it at BEA. So we have an input-output table, which we also call a supply-use table. And this is when I was talking earlier about the list of goods and services produced in the United States. That's actually a supply-use table. And so what it is we know what goods and services are produced or supplied, and we know what industries supply them, and we also know who uses them. We call these final demand users or intermediate input users. So it allows us to see the flow of goods and services from production to use, and that allows us to not only see what industries are producing space-based goods and services, but is it are consumers using these services like satellite TV? Are businesses using services such as the precision agriculture that we talked about recently, and also government use? To what extent is the government purchasing or creating these goods and services? So at BEA, and I should mention that these national accounting procedures that we use and these frameworks are actually an international standard called the System of National Accounts. And so there's this framework that we use, and it does actually start with the input-output tables. So thank you for asking that question.
Great, and thanks, Tina, for picking that up. I think it's really nice to go into that level of detail in terms of what we're talking about for the economists out there, because when we're making a case for space economy, obviously you need to have a big engagement from the economist community, not just the space community as well, working together on figuring this all out. So that's great stuff. Okay, I'm looking back at the and some. Now my turn for a glitch, but all back now. So I'm looking over at the next question. I think I'll go to Abbas next, because we've got a question coming in with regards to who's really leading investment in Azerbaijan from kind of the government perspective or the private sector, and how are those two stakeholder groups potentially working together in the Azerbaijani context. So Abbas, if that's all right with you, I'll hand over the floor to answer that question. I'll just repeat quickly. It's really that relationship between the public and the private sectors, and how those two sectors are working together to continue the great momentum that we've already heard about from the Azerbaijani context, and what the relationship between government and private sector looks like in Azerbaijan. So over to you. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. In our case, the answer is absolutely. It is the government is the main driver for the establishment and the development of the space sector in the country. But the approach of Azerbaijan was very unique, and it was very weighted because in 2010, Azercosmos was established as a part of the program of diversifying the economy. And as many of you may know, Azerbaijan is an oil and gas exporter, and therefore our economy was mainly based on the natural resources. Those, in order to diversify the economy, operating telecommunication satellites was one of the options and one of the decisions that were made. So with that, Azercosmos was in very practical, fully state-owned company that was responsible for the launch and operation of telecommunication satellites. With the first Azerspace 1 satellite in orbit and providing services, Azercosmos brought the great results and the value to the table, and the government further on the Spot 7, and later on rebranded it to Azersky. So we also enjoy the satellite imagery, and we use the satellite data from precision farming to the environmental issues, to emergency issues, to urban planning, and so on and so forth. It is anticipated that we'll establish a national spatial data infrastructure, NSDI. The government also passed the state program for the development of remote sensing for the years of 2019 and 2022, and this is aimed at promotion of active usage of satellite imagery by our public entities. Again, this program will support the socioeconomic and technological development of the country. So with that said, with the practical approach that we took, Azercosmos was only a satellite operator and was mainly focused on commercial activities, but now it has the mandate of a space agency and carries out functions accordingly. So I would say now it is the time when we're trying to get the private sector involved. However, as anywhere, as the space in the space industry in general, we're losing many specialists and many investors to the general IT sector. It seems more. It seems a quicker. There is a quicker success rate. There are not many challenges. Many people have been in it for many years, and there were many unicorns as startups. There are many success stories, and therefore people and youth mainly tends to go to that sector. This is the time for us to bring the private sector on board. However, we do not have, as in Azerbaijan, with a country in a country with about 10 million, with a bit more than 10 million people of population, to have private sector that is actively involved in space industry and wants to actively invest and be part of it. However, we are in this process where we raise awareness from high-level, high-ranking state officials to youth, to aspiring young scientists and the general public, and that is why the IAC, the International Astronautical Congress theme that we proposed is global challenges and opportunities, give space a chance, which is very similar to our topic today, making the case for space. Those were by raising the awareness, by showing the political support at the highest level, and the attention, the focus to the space industry and to the space economy. We're trying to get the investors involved in this sector. Thank you.
And thank you, Abbas. Great stuff, and yeah, it's nice to see the IAC combining in 2023 with such an important topic, which I think is clearly on the minds of lots of people around the world, more and more so going forward as we see record levels of public and private investment in space activities. So well timed there. Temadayo, I'm going to jump back to you now because we have quite a lot of questions coming in your direction. And so I'm going to take the liberty of doing a little bit of a summary here because I think, yeah, first of all, it would be great to kind of try and unpack some of the success stories that you've discussed in your remarks and really hear a little bit more about why certain things are working and which kind of examples that you can give in terms of how things are really working well in the African context. So some more concrete examples perhaps would be great. And then looking at the questions coming in, looking at the kind of national, regional, and then international context, how are all of those different levels working from an African point of view? And I think this kind of goes back to a question that we got a lot from participants during registration, and that's talking about how to take collaboration between countries that are just starting out on their space activities with countries that are more established in their space activities. I'll stop there because the list could get quite long, and yeah, hand over the microphone to you. So as I say, unpacking some of the success stories so we can really understand what's working and why, and then looking at how those different levels of national, regional, and international all intersect from an African perspective would be great. So Temadayo, I'll put the microphone back over to you, please, and then you can take it from there. Thanks.
Okay, talking about examples, all of these countries are using freely available satellite data to for application in various instances. You know, it's not just the countries that have satellites in space, even the ones with, you know, no hardware or no experience in the space sector. I'm talking of like a lot of new entrants. So I also saw a question about, you know, what it's like for like new countries that are joining the space race in Africa. For a lot of them, when they come on board and say, oh, we want to use space resources in our country, the first thing they do is not just, you know, to invest money in satellite project or something. No. What they do is to first use freely available, and this talks about open data policy. So the first thing they do is to use the freely available data, you know, for applications in different Z observation applications. So when they do this, and some of them go to a point where, you know, they need their capabilities, of their own. So, you know, they need maybe better resolution imagery, or some of them are trying to, you know, develop communication capacity and all of that. And that leads right into thinking and developing a satellite project. For a lot of other countries, they are more interested in, oh, we don't have the technical expertise to like run a satellite program, for example. So let's look at a way where we can send our students and young engineers abroad to actually learn about some of these technologies. So some of them do this through satellite projects, and they develop capacity programs to work around this. And that's why you see that a lot of the satellite projects in Africa actually have capacity development programs, you know, alongside it. So they don't just, for example, give a contract to Surrey. Let's take Nigeria, for example. Some of the Nigerian satellite projects, the contract was given to like maybe a UK company or like a Chinese company. But alongside that, they were able to send their engineers over to the UK, to actually study and see how some of these technologies have been developed. And if you look at Egypt, if you look at Angola, it's the same thing. So developing capacity program alongside some of these satellite projects is helping some of these countries to
that was that was just getting interesting. I was really looking forward to see. I mean, I think we know where Demedayo was going there, and that I think the fact that in some cases they're actually capacity building alongside the economic development aspect too, and I think that hybrid approach was where we were going in terms of what might have been working on the ground in some of the countries that Demedayo was listing. Okay, great. So I think with that, we've got one more question, and this goes back to you, Tina. And it was really just a question about publicly available studies for space-based assets to new markets. And if you could kind of give any insights on this type of resource that could be available to some of our participants and that you've perhaps been using in your work, that'd be great. So over to you, Tina.
Great, thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of great reports available about the space economy and different aspects of the space economy. So the OECD has a whole program related to space, and they put out reports that are more timely, and I think even there's a COVID response report out, and they're a great resource. OECD, they're based in Paris, but they're an international group. Also, the Satellite Industry Association in the United States, they produce a satellite industry report that every year that gives really detailed information about the uses of satellites and kind of where the revenue comes from. The Space Foundation is another group that puts out estimates of the space economy, and we've looked to that report for help in our own research. There's also a number of government agencies that and nonprofits that put out reports. So the Office of Space Commerce, these are colleagues that I work with, they have a website with a lot of information and a lot of good remarks there as well. So there's a lot of really good reports available with public information. Thank you.
Hey, great, thanks a lot. And I think that brings us right on time because we had an hour scheduled, and I don't want to go over and take more of everybody's time today. So I think it's been a really good exchange, and I'm afraid that we didn't quite get through all of the questions in the chat. So we're going to have to think about how we can make sure that those questions get to the speakers, and we can engineer a conversation that carries on after this session. So I suppose I'll just do one last thing where I'll show you exactly where you can keep up to date with what we're doing here at UNOOSA with regards to the Space Economy Initiative. And it's all on our website, which is should be on your screens right there. And as you can see, we're announcing the different sessions as they go. And this is where we put all of the information with regards to registration and also the reports, the insight reports that we publish, summarizing the remarks that we've heard from the speakers during the panel presentations and also the discussion afterwards. I'm just going to scroll down to the bottom here where you can see this is the past session, so we'll repeat this going forward, where you can download the reports and then also see the recordings, which are also uploaded on our YouTube channel. And then we share the presentations. So this is what you're looking at with regards to the colleagues that joined us on the 15th of June for the kickoff. So last but not least, please do keep in touch and keep engaging with us on these issues. We've got 5 more sessions scheduled. So the next one is on July 24th. We'll be looking at how to scale up. So we'll be then really focusing on the companies and the policies which are being used around the world in different examples to take those space companies from the startup phase into the more established phase. So we'll be hearing from colleagues from the space sector, from the private commercial space sector, as well as policymakers who are trying to engineer that ecosystem of support that can be provided to make these things a reality. And then, as you can see, we're then going to keep going through all of the different building blocks that combined will really make a healthy space economy a reality. And then after all of the webinars are complete, we're then going to summarize all of the different insights that we've received from all of the experts that we've had on the different sessions into a final publication that UNOOSA is going to be putting out towards the end of the year. So definitely stay tuned for that. So with that, I see that we've just hit the hour mark. So I'm going to thank all of our speakers once again for joining us. It's been a really interesting discussion. And thank you very much to everyone else for joining us from all around the world. We've had a fantastic session today, hearing from three different colleagues working in different parts of the world and in different parts of the space sector, but all giving their energy and their insight and their expertise to taking their respective space sectors to the next level. And that's absolutely fantastic. And that's what we want to do here with the Space Economy Initiative. It's getting that platform for sharing those insights and those success stories. So thanks again to everyone for joining us today. Really, wherever you are in the world, enjoy the rest of your Monday, and looking forward to keeping in touch. So thanks again, and from everyone here at UNOOSA, take care and stay safe. Cheers. Bye.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you.